Okay, so we're going to get started. Thanks, everyone, and thanks for your patience with technical issues. We learn more and more every time. Tonight, we're welcoming Shawn Gross. Shawn's been a member of the Viking Plastics team since 2005. Currently, Shawn serves as engineering manager and works to deploy state-of-the-art CAE. Now, you have to tell me what CAE is, because I don't know. I'm out of the biz.
Computer-aided engineering. So basically you think about CAD and other software that helps you, engineer parts before you ever build them.
Awesome. And molding technologies so that programs launch and continue into production with success. In addition, he has a passion for teams and culture development and spends time working with all departments to instill a culture of continuous improvement at Viking Plastics. A graduate of Penn State. Brad, do you want to speak up? He's showing his shirt off. With AS and BS degrees in plastic engineering technology, Shawn approaches new products with a perfect quality mindset and desire to eliminate waste. And on top of that, Shawn is an #1 good guy and is incredibly involved as a volunteer both in Union City and Corry. I don't know how he finds the time, but he's the only man that can keep up with me on soda pop drinking. So now to talk about culture and how to cultivate the workplace where you want to be and where your employees want to stay, I'm going to turn it over to Shawn.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity. And so what are you seeing right now? Are you seeing my face or are you seeing my screen?
Face.
My face. All right. Let's see if I can make it share screen here. So I'm going to share my screen and
there we go.
Boom.
Beautiful.
I'm going to start. All right. So let's see. Start the slideshow. All right, so the agenda. Appreciate you being with us this evening. I hope to make it brief but impactful for all of you. The agenda. I'll talk a little bit about me, a little about our journey, and what we've been doing at Viking Plastics. A real big desire of mine is to get you excited about what your business or organization could be. And I spelled organization incorrect. It's good to have that out there in front of everybody. So everybody can still hear me? Peter, you still there? I see Peter's.
Yep, we can hear you.
I am. I'm
right.
sharing this with my wife, so it's easier just to keep everything off.
Yep. So a little bit about me. I'm a Northwest Pennsylvania native, and you've got a little bit of bio from Chuck there, but married, couple kids, chickens, over 13 years with Viking, and I do have a passion for culture development. It's something that and spent my time kind of researching and learning from others that I think have implemented some neat cultures in their organizations and businesses. And I do like to volunteer. I feel like I've been blessed with a lot of things in my life, and it's an opportunity for me to give back and, rather than just complain, which I'm sure I can do plenty of that, I like to actually make things happen to make things better. But to give you a little background, Viking Plastics is an injection molding company that's been a fixture of the Corry community for, almost 5 decades here. And, Kelly Goodsell, who many of you know, is our president. We are a global company. We have facilities across the United States, into Brazil, and into China. But in Pennsylvania here, where we really initiated our culture change, about 125 employees are a part of our team. And we are, not many people recognize where we're located in Corry, kind of back in the residential neighborhood. But we have some very large customers, tier 1 and direct to the OEMs like Ford, Chrysler, and General Motors. So a lot of very high requirements of our company to be competitive in this industry, which is largely automotive. So a big goal of mine is for you to see value in culture development. In the course of my career, I've encountered some good cultures and some not so good cultures. And I've seen businesses and organizations get frustrated because they have these great plans and strategies, but they don't get them to come to fruition. And so I guess first, the kind of a definition of culture that I found that I liked, that I think kind of really hones in on what we're looking at. You know, what are the shared attitudes, values, goals, and practices that characterize, you know, your organization, your business or institution? A phrase that I heard a long time ago at a conference was that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And really, that means that, a lot of business schools talk about business plans and business strategies and things of that nature. But it's kind of like fielding a team where you want to go be competitive against, a top 10 team, but statistically, you can't run, you can't throw the ball, and you can't block, and you want to play competitively. So your strategies aren't going to amount to much if you don't have the right culture, if you don't have the right development of people in your organization. And so I've seen those frustrations firsthand. I've experienced them. At some point in my career, I decided, I wanted to, it's kind of like who moved my cheese. When it comes to change, I'd rather be an agent of change for things that I think will make us successful. So maybe a couple of you could share why you're here, other than you wanted to, hear an interesting story. But if you had any goals or things that kind of frustrate you about your organization, or things that, maybe would help me steer my conversation with you a little bit. If anybody had anything, yell it out, and I will take a couple notes, and then we'll move on.
I'll speak up, Shawn. I'm never shy, you know that. So we've got a really good team and good culture, in essence, at Rossbacher Insurance. But two things. Number one, we have acquired a couple additional agencies and a couple different additional businesses, and we are trying to implement our culture into those teams, additional locations, well, kind of like you did in Indiana and Kentucky. And so that's always a challenge and a slow process. And then the second thing is we're all getting older and looking to pass the torch. I'm not saying I'm retiring tomorrow or anything, but trying to get the next wave or next generation bought in and on board with the culture and pursuing the culture and evolving the culture.
Right. Good. Yeah, those are some things that I can definitely talk to. Any others before I move on? Hearing nothing, I'll keep going, and feel free to raise your hand. Let me know if you had something you wanted to add. See if we can rock and roll forward here. So, a little bit about the history of Viking, and what I encountered. So we are a union facility, which blows the minds of many who tour our facility to learn about our culture, because it doesn't feel that way. The stereotypical union relationship that you would expect in a facility. How would you make a big change happen within a unionized facility? Great people, but that wall that was built, in many of the minds of people, between, direct labor and management and different departments, it was there mentally and in some cases physically. And if you look at the business, I'm sure Kelly would share that, the performance, as an owner at the time was not as consistent as what he would have liked. If you make a significant investment in a business and it doesn't perform to that expectation, it's kind of a disappointment at times. So, there was these things that were, historically a part of the business that could be worked on. I'm many of you that do know me, I like to have fun, and work wasn't as fun to be. And I know that there's this idea that work is, it's a four-letter word. You should be scowling every time you walk through the door, I guess. But I don't view that as being what we need to have. We had people that have worked for our company for, decades, but no one was really excited about it. It was more of a job. It paid the bills, but I wasn't going to get real excited, right? Because it just wasn't the culture that we had. And as a manufacturer, we had a lot of waste in our operation, that kept us from being as profitable as we could be, to provide as much benefit as we could to the stakeholders of the business, owner, banks, the employees, our community, things that we'd like to invest in. And this idea of, I use this frequently when I give this presentation, but people would show up just to make the donuts. If you remember back in the 80s and that commercial, time to make the donuts. That's kind of the way it felt a decade ago at Viking. And so, one of the things to say is, when customers would come in, our people would hide. They'd find the biggest machine that they could find and go hide behind it, because, of course, the only people that could really talk to a customer would be, someone with a button-down shirt or a collared shirt. And I felt that just that went against my grain. I feel like, everybody needs to recognize that they're important and valued as an employee of our company. And it's the same within any organization. Kind of like the golden rule, do unto others, you have them do unto you. How I feel at work, regardless of my position, I want to feel valued. And we didn't do a great job of that across the board. Not that there weren't pockets of it, but across the board, it wasn't that way. So we at Viking had not really established a culture that we liked, and it was kind of just this fluid thing, people showing up to work, and obviously, you put lists of things that you want to accomplish, and you have some strategies, but they aren't really getting executed on the way you want. And coming out of the what at the time was the Great Recession, I think we're going to rename this one the Great Recession now, but 2008 and 9, the automotive industry, really took a hit, and the company, was holding on for dear life. But coming out of it, there was this, big recovery with the, economic recovery, and as the supply chain to the automotive industry was hit pretty hard, those who survived, companies like Viking, were being force-fed. It's the kind of the perfect storm. You got all this business, but systems had decayed, and you didn't have a culture of excellence. And as a result, you can see some of the pictures of just the way it looked walking around our plant, where we had just stuff everywhere. And it caused a lot of problems for our performance financially, and just how it felt when you walked through the door. So we said, sales were going up, but, our attitudes weren't keeping up with it, and our systems weren't working. And, in manufacturing, if you're, familiar with that, that's a bad place to be. And a key thing is we didn't have a mindset of improvement. And for Viking, really had to hone in on what we wanted to accomplish. And we know of, how do we implement that and, get that ingrained in the minds of everybody that walks through the door. So we discussed as a team, some of the things that we really wanted. This is kind of the fun part of being a part of the leadership, right? What do I want? What do I want it to look like? What's that vision for my organization or my company? And, can it be fun? Can people actually seek out our company as a destination? Can we be an employer of choice? These are all things that we threw around at a very high level, and things that resonated, quite honestly, with, every employee that walked through the door. When you started talking with direct reports, it's like, what if instead of just being, a place that's a paycheck for you, what if it was the employer of choice? What if your friends, were like, you work at Viking? Man, I wish I worked at Viking. right? Which was not the reputation that we had at the time. And then obviously operationally, you have to have this, performance across the board in order to be viable long term. And a big thing is, we knew we didn't want to shop our way to financial performance. I know that's sometimes a technique that's used at businesses, but that was not something that we viewed as an option. We wanted to try something that would be different. So we had looked around for, what would be maybe some guidance, for what a good manufacturing company would look like. What would it feel like? And I say that Kelly stumbled across this gentleman, and he says I did, but basically in the same week we were watching videos of a gentleman out in Washington State who runs a manufacturing company and who had taken the lean concepts from Toyota, the Toyota production system, and boiled them down and created this really unique culture. And he openly shares it with anybody. And, I recall going into Kelly's office and telling him that, for the first time in my life, I'd really consider packing up and selling my acreage and my house and moving out, across the country to work for a guy like this who, in his daily cadence, he values his people and educates his people and, spends and invests in his people. And as a result, has this phenomenally performing company that people seek out, employment there. And so it was pretty exciting. And we ended up, forming a relationship with him, and his name's Paul Akers. And he's been kind of a mentor to me and someone that I communicate with on a frequent basis and have traveled, actually out to Japan with. Let's see if I can get this to roll over. So, one of the things that Paul, talks about is learning to see waste in your organization. And, if you're a member of the YMCA, it's like, well, what is waste? Well, waste is I walk into an organization and I need an answer, I need checked in, I need to pay a bill, and I have to stand there and wait for that to happen, right? So I'm wasting my time. In manufacturing, there's all sorts of waste. There's the waste of making a bad product. There's, the waste of too much inventory. There's the waste of movement, right? When in my business, we don't make more money because we move the product further around in our plants. And maybe in your organization, you can look at things that way as well. What am I doing to make their experience as good as possible? And then the other part of it is growing people, which was not historically something we did very well at Viking. So we knew we needed something that was simple to communicate because, 80, 90 people at the time, 100 people, it's hard to, give everybody a 200-page book, expect them to memorize it when you're just busy with life. And personally, this process called 2-second lean resonated with us because it was a philosophy that was simple, and we felt it was going to be sustainable, which is a huge thing with culture because culture can be very, very fragile. And we had challenges, which many of you probably have challenges, and you can see some of those there where, multiple shifts and, how do we get people together? Our business was growing quickly, and here you want to do a culture change. And really, this had to be something that was embraced by Kelly and the leadership team all the way down, and we had to live it. It couldn't be something that we read as managers and leaders and just hand off to the next person and say, this is something you need to do. Culture development is very much something that people are going to look at the leadership and emulate them. So if you're not living it, it's going to be hard to make it happen. So in our business, we all got on the same page with what we were attempting to do to improve our business. We read the same book, and we had conversations with people about it and what they saw and what we looked at for a vision in our company. And we started small. to make sure throughout the business, so not just that the president of the company could read it and understand it, but that we could bring someone new into the plant that may be an operator or a material handler, and that they could understand the concepts very quickly and easily. And quite honestly, we started to change our hiring practices to ask questions prior to hiring to make sure that people could see themselves working in an environment where they would be expected to learn, to grow, and to improve the business as they did those things. And so we took steps with that education, and some of it was the mental educational part, and then some of it was physically changing the environment to make it more user-friendly for employees. And instead of asking for people to provide their suggestions on improvement, we got rid of our suggestion box and said, look, our job, every one of us, is to come to work and to work on making it better. So how do we work as a team to improve the business and each department, and as a result become a place where people really take pride in working and want to have their friends work at it, and makes recruiting easier and retention's higher, and all these things that organizationally allow you to run a much better business or operation. And so as we undertook that, we migrated across our operation with the strategy of training people and educating them. We have a daily cadence. We call it a drumbeat meeting that's held several times a day across our plants, where people learn the same information and would be able to share on the improvements that they were making in the business. And a key thing that I thought was very important was that from a strategic nature of the business, we added culture development to our strategic plan. So if you come to Viking Plastics and ask what our strategic plan is, first of all, it's not something that's sitting in Kelly's desk. It's something that we share with all of our employees. And many of them know that we want to grow profitable sales. We want to eliminate waste. We want to grow a culture of continuous improvement, and we want to enhance the value of the organization to all of our stakeholders: employees, ownership, community, suppliers. Kind of big goals, but you can understand what we're attempting to do, and so that's something that we share with all of our employees. And a key thing with management, again, I keep coming back to that, but a lot of times initiatives become something for someone else, but this is really one that became for all. And so Kelly showing up to our drumbeat meetings on a daily basis and sharing the improvements that he's made in how he executes his function as president. And then if many of you know Kelly, patience. He doesn't have a lot of it, but having that patience for this process to work was important, and realizing that it wouldn't be a straight trend line up, that it would have some bumps in it. And that he would continue to support it even with those bumps. So that was important as well. So some of the things I already talked about, as a group, things that we do. We started an internal academy, which was just a cooped up idea I had that this would be a great place to try it. And really diving into the details with people. Imagine in a business that you're opening up your financial statements and training people on the balance sheet, the income statement, and the cash flow statement. Imagine an operator getting a look at that, and then going out and encouraging people to not take safety glasses home, and to reuse earplugs, because they know that every time we throw those out when they don't need to be thrown out, or every time we have to open a package that we didn't need to open, that it adds to the $20,000 a month of supplies that we spend money on. And that if we didn't spend as much on that stupid stuff, right, things that we could control, we'd have more money for the good things that we do want to do. And so we knew we were really firing on all cylinders when it wasn't Kelly or Rob or me or Rob or Bob or any of the managers happen to say things that normal managers say, right? Or company, leaders, that peers would start to hold peers accountable for, the performance of the business and encourage people. And so that was, kind of a proud papa moment when those things started to happen. And so for us in manufacturing, it's important that we know what waste is, because it's really a daily game to go out and tackle it and get rid of it. Defects, overproduction, making more than we need, waiting, having waiting in our processes, adding extra processes, non-value added processes, transportation, moving, molds and materials and supplies further than we need to move them, and inventory where we stock up on stuff. We make, 150 copies when we only need 5, or we bring in, 68 reams of paper when we only need to bring in 10, right? Motion where we set up a work cell and an operator is working, in a 10 by 10 area, and they, in that 8-hour shift, would put, 3 miles of walking on in a 10 by 10 square. If we think a little bit, we can reduce their motion so that they maybe only have to move, a couple hundred feet over the course of the day in that 10 by 10 square. And thereby they aren't as worn out by the end of the day, and they spend more time helping improve the quality of our product. And the big one is the wasted talent that many organizations have, where, we never ask people to engage their brain in the work. We hire people to drive a fork truck versus figure out how not to drive the fork truck. Fork trucks don't make us money. We have them, they cost money, but they don't make our products any more valuable. And so in any organization that I've been in, I can find these things because we've trained ourselves to see the waste. And then we expect people to engage at our drumbeat meetings and, be a part of them and share and to be a part of the process. And, we talk about being a process engineer, which in plastics has some meaning, but basically everything that anybody does is a process. When you brush your teeth in the morning, you probably have the toothpaste and the toothbrush pretty close together. And that process of why you do that is because you don't want to spend time walking across the bathroom and finding the toothpaste, and you don't really want to spend time doing that. You want to spend time doing other things. So you made that process more efficient. And so everywhere we look, we want to be process engineers to make things more efficient. And here are some pictures of what it looks like at a drumbeat meeting, and how people are expected to, participate. People talking every day is a part of our process. Imagine, the fear factor that we've had to overcome with many, many people. Improvements that are shared daily that previously, again, people would come to work, make the donuts, and it didn't matter if they made it better. And now at the end of the year, we celebrate thousands and thousands of improvements that make our business just a little bit better. And we share gratefuls, a time when people can yell out something that they're thankful for. Maybe it's someone else at work. Maybe it's, they're thankful that their, father, just finished up chemo and came through, beat cancer. I mean, just things that help us to know things about people. And again, just another, brick in the buildup of our culture and what we want to have. I mentioned this academy, but, just some things that we learn about and the deep dive that we take, and really awesome to see that people, A, have an interest in it, and B, it builds connections with other people that they might not normally associate with. Some of you may have a small business where it's fairly intimate, but, when you run multiple shifts and you have people in different departments, there are times when, someone, who are you and why are you here? And we were able to kind of break down those barriers and educate people all at the same time. So, we look at, how do you know if your culture is working, right? I mean, culture is tough to measure. It's not a, a metric, a single metric. It's kind of like you know it when you see it if it's the right thing. And you've probably walked into businesses or organizations and you're like, yeah, this is not a great place. But for us, some things that tell us that what we're doing is correct is that instead of, me, Rob, Kelly, Bob giving tours, we actually have frontline operators and, direct labor and process engineers and material handlers giving tours to, bankers and to customers. And, that was a big, hairy, audacious goal that we had, that because of the culture that we developed, people don't run and hide. They actually take pride in showing off the business that they've built. We're more organized, which makes the jobs easier. Our performance from metrics, which I'll show in a minute, has significantly, the relationships that have been built up. And, people don't recognize, but we've probably had, it's well over 40 organizations from outside of Corry come in to our plant. So from across the globe, coming to Corry, Pennsylvania, to learn about the culture that we put in place and how we implemented it. And that's been a neat thing to do, to show off our community and to, really put us on the map with a lot of people that are trying to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. So something that gets me excited, and, I'm a plastics engineer and I'll talk to you about plastics, but you want to talk about culture, I'll bend your ear for a long, long time. So some of our employees that, previously, were never really counted on to do a lot. And, then they, took interest. And, when we have a customer visit, they're knocking on the door asking, hey, are we going to need to give a tour? It's not the run and hide mode. And I'll tell you what, when you have, leaders from a potential customer come in and, they're like, okay, well, Kelly's going to give the tour or Shawn's going to give the tour. And it's like, nope, we're going to have you meet with a couple of our operators and one of our process techs. And they're like, really? And I say, hey, you know what? My job is really not to sell you anything. My job is to get you to want to work here. And I think if you decide you want to work here, you'll want to buy from us because you understand what we're all about. And, it's a pretty bold statement to make, but every customer that comes through the door, before they leave, they're like, you're right. I would love to work here because of the culture that they encountered. Some of you may be metrics driven, but, our defective parts per million graph on the left, you want it to be lower. World class is below the green line. And since 2013, we've been below that green line. So we are very, very competitive when it comes to our quality. And our on-time delivery, wanting to be above 99%. And you can see our numbers there. We came from some times when it was pretty rough, when we weren't delivering as well as we should. And so I'm sure Kelly is, an owner, could share a lot of information about how he witnessed this transformation in the business. And it happened in a fairly short amount of time. And it's been a sustainable thing over the course of time for us. So I'll quickly summarize, you can kind of read there, but, open it up for some discussion about how we achieved what we achieved. I know Brad had mentioned, acquiring additional businesses, and that's something that, over the last few years, we've encountered as we've acquired other businesses, other injection molders, and worked to implement the culture that we developed in Pennsylvania. And as a leadership team have had to discuss how much of it has to be exactly the same versus, every facility having its own, flavor. And so those are all things that you get to kind of wade through. And depending on the facility and, what kind of culture it had, gives you different challenges. For us, I think it's been that we want to be consistent on some basic things, but allow there to be some individuality on things that don't matter as much to us, right? Where there's, what hills do you want to die on with every plant that you buy or acquire or, business that you add on, versus what are the key things that are important. For us, being people focused is super important. You talk about how you build up that next generation of people. I think people flock to things that are successful and where they feel valued. And so, as we encounter young people, and if you looked in some of those pictures, there were a lot of younger than me, who get excited at it. The idea of their ideas matter and their efforts matter. And I think that's something that's been key to what we've been doing. So that's, me slamming through a bunch of slides, open it up for some questions and, see if you had anything you wanted me to elaborate on.
Shawn, I unmuted.
Okay.
This is Chuck. I had a question. I know we don't have, we're a very small office, but can you explain to me like how a drumbeat meeting starts, how it flows? I saw the list of things that you do, but can you give me a sense of how it works? Because I love that concept.
Yeah, so, I was in a meeting and I said, at Viking, historically, what we would do is every quarter we'd have an update meeting. Half the people would sleep through it, and then we'd be cranky because no one remembered anything, right? And I kind of used some of my, my religious experience, right? So, you can go to church for a year and essentially you hear the entire liturgical calendar. And so, but why do you go back, right? You go back because you deviate, you get diluted, diverted from, the message. And so you need to be brought back to center. So I brought this idea that, what if we had a daily cadence to a meeting where people hear the same information? So for us, it happens 4 times a day. For each shift, there's one, and then there's a catch-up one for people that kind of work a weird shift, a little bit of a different split shift. And they last between 10 and 20 minutes. We cover the amount of sales that we had yesterday, so we're very open with our sales numbers, which requires you to get very, educated about the fact that if you sell $200,000 worth of stuff, it doesn't mean that Kelly put, $150,000 in his pocket, because people will believe that that's what your profitability is. So we had to educate people across the board on that. Our quality, very, very important to our customers. So if we had a complaint, if we had something internal that was concerning, we cover that. We cover waste. We educate people on what waste is in the operation, and people yell out something that they recognize as one of the forms of waste. And we've augmented that with a number of other things. So, it's led by an employee who chooses to walk up and lead. In the beginning, it was led by, managers, which was another great goal of ours, to have it not led by managers or supervisors. We celebrate birthdays, acknowledge birthdays. We sometimes watch a video, like a YouTube video or a video that someone internally made to educate people about something that they know about or saw, or an improvement that they made. So we try to make it, an engaging 10 to 20 minutes. Does that answer your question?
Yes, but is there any real drumming involved?
Sometimes at the beginning people will put music on, and I might do some air guitar. That would be the limit of it. That would be my real experience there.
You just pushed me into a convert. Okay, thank you.
All right.
Shawn, how did you experience an unusual bump in employee turnover or anything as you made the transitions, or did you do a good job of keeping people?
Great question. There's always this concept, of when something's not going the way it should, do you get rid of everybody? Do you start over? Is it that people don't care, that they're lazy, they're morally defective? Or is it really a case of influence and, maybe some slumber on the part of the employee around what they should be doing? We had people that weeded themselves out of the process because they just could not get over the change, right? And I'm talking from operator up to manager level, people that, I just don't see that as being part of my job. And, we had to stick to our guns and say it is. It's part of the DNA of the company that we want to have ingrained. So there was some turnover there, but by and large, and this is, it's kind of wild. The youngest employees, the ones with the least amount of tenure, were the quickest to adopt it. Had comments like, "Wow, I wish the last place that I worked for had done this, because they'd probably still be, in existence." Our more senior people were, probably rightfully so, more suspicious of it being the management technique of the month. And so it took us a while to convince them, that, hey, this is here to stay. We think it has value. And now they're some of the biggest advocates, which is just awesome.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Shawn,
Any other?
I know you guys in the academy, or Viking Academy, you really are very transparent as far as, I don't think you share the P&L statement or anything like that, but how do you draw the line, or where do you draw the line as far as educating employees on, like you said, 200,000 in sales, and what does that do to the bottom line? And so how do you be transparent but not fully transparent?
Yeah, I would tell you this is probably hard for owners, because there's, this, what are people going to think? And we really took a leap into it, Brad. When a couple weeks ago I was going through with the team in a Viking Academy class, we went through the entire balance sheet, the income statement, and the cash flow. So people saw the numbers. Not everybody's as comfortable doing that. And so, everybody have to kind of figure out their own way through it. We use EBITDA, that's kind of a metric that, industry-wide people would kind of center around. So we explain what that is and what it means. So yeah, that's a tougher one, because, there are people that, $50,000 is a lot of money, and then you're going to add more zeros to that, right? And so as soon as you do that, people start, and I'm talking even engineers, can think, they can look at a gross margin number and say, look, we're just making all this money, but they don't recognize all the things that come out of that number, right? And for some, they don't recognize the amount of investment that goes back into the business. So you got to have a holistic approach to it. I'm sure that I've encountered people that have toured our plant who, are like, look, I could never show people my financials because I'm making $1 million and I don't want to give them a 50-cent raise. Well, you've got a culture struggle there, because you're probably, not doing the right thing, but that's just, a different thing, right?
Yeah.
What is Zebada?
EBITDA?
Zebada.
EBITDA, earnings, EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So if you study any public company, they don't really like talking profit. They talk EBITDA and stuff like that. So kind of a financial metric.
I had never heard the acronym. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. No problem. Any others?
So,
Hey, Shawn.
Oh.
Hey, Shawn.
Yes.
So one of the things you mentioned, but you kind of covered it quickly, was hiring into the culture.
Yeah.
Why is that important?
Yeah. So, I get accused of being a zealot, and so Rob, if everybody doesn't know, Rob Prindle, who just asked the question, has been at the company longer than I have. But I feel like if you're gonna do something that's very different than what a lot of companies are, right? So if you walk into a lot of manufacturing companies, and you're going to be a forklift operator, it's probably similar in most companies, but when you come to ours, you're going to have a different expectation of you. And I would rather try to glean from that person before we commit that they have an interest in it. So, I'll give you an example. Before I hire an engineer, I'll do the phone interview, and I will challenge them if I like what I'm hearing to, and I don't know if this is legal, I have no idea, but I'll give them homework. I'll ask them to, research 2-second lean for a couple minutes and a couple of lean topics, and I'll give them a video to our link to our company, in our improvement walk that's on our website. And I'll just ask them, hey, give me a couple sentences on what you learned and whether you could see yourself really being a part of something that's different and like this. And more often than not, I get paragraphs back because people are excited, right? And so, we want exciting, right? We want people that are pumped up to do this. And so for me, that's critical and important. And something that as I talked about Paul Akers, his company out in Washington, they will not accept a piece of paper for, an application. They want video applications only. And he figures if you can't figure out how to do that, you probably aren't going to be successful in his company. So I think that's, probably the heart of why I value it, because I really want to hire for culture. I will put to second place someone that's more technically qualified, who does not, to me, seem like they're interested in being a part of the culture or want to adapt to what we're doing. I will train for the skills. I want the attitude that we need.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting, having gone through this process, if I could just add a little meat to the bone there, the employees who start off in the drum beats, who say, what they're grateful for example, that then turns into what I did for the company, and then that then turns into, being part of the Viking Academy. So it's not just dumping people in the deep end, right? Because anybody it's not just saying, okay, everybody's going to have to talk today, because there aren't many people who are going to be comfortable with that scenario. It's easy to sort of warm up to the idea, I think, the way that Shawn and Viking approached it.
Yeah, trying to create a path forward for everybody. I mean, I'm wired differently, I mean, I'm, at home, I'm pretty, introverted. When I get to work, I'm kind of like the Tasmanian devil at times. And, I like to laugh and I like to work hard. And, but not everybody's like me. Not everybody's going to get up in front and cheer. But how do we create a path forward for everybody to make a difference in our business and be a part of the culture? I think that's important, and why we have, over time, augmented it to try to, facilitate more and more people. Good.
You mentioned the challenges of integrating into your culture the firms in Kentucky and Ohio, or out of the area, and you didn't really tell us the end story on that. Have you guys decided to go with a more rigid structure imposed on them and have more consistency throughout the organization, or have you decided to give them a little more slack and be individualistic according to their environment?
Yeah, so good question. So here are some of the key things that we do expect across the plants. We expect there to be people that read the 2-second lean book and embrace the culture of continuous improvement. We expect that there's a drumbeat meeting, that we as a company are sharing certain information, and that we are working to grow people to be more comfortable, leading a drumbeat, participating in a drumbeat, doing improvements every day and sharing them. There's lots of room to maneuver in those, roles, those definitions. But if you go into our Kentucky plant, there's drumbeat meetings multiple times a day, and it's going to have a similar flow because they've all used Pennsylvania as kind of, I mean, here's the weird thing, Peter. We bought the Kentucky plant. We bring them up to take a look at what we're doing, and you can tell who's excited, because they want to go back and they want to be like Pennsylvania like tomorrow. And we're like, hey, we're years into this. This is a journey. Culture is, this continual development. It's a continuous improvement is a journey. It's never ending, right? So, we're trying to, hold them back a little bit because they just want to turn the world upside down, which would just destroy the business, right? You got to be careful with it. But they take elements and they weave it in. But there's certain, the same expectations. So you go to Kentucky, you're going to see drumbeat meetings. They got a big monitor. They're sharing information. People are talking. They have similar topics. You go to Indiana, the same thing. The Indiana plant is a lot larger. Now you're talking, 150 to 200 people, has different issues with how you get people accumulated. So different things that we continue to work on, and they're, probably in the beginning of their journey versus some of the maturity that we have in our plant in Pennsylvania and Kentucky. It's a good question.
It's a good answer. Thank you.
Yeah. Any others?
Last one for me, Shawn.
Yeah.
How does Viking come up with your quote unquote culture? So between Kelly's brain and Shawn's brain and other leaders' brain, Rob's and Rob 1 and Rob 2, how does Shawn know what the Viking culture is? Is it by having lunch with Kelly or having meetings, or?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. I think we, maybe we had some divine providence in our company, right? The right group of leadership being in place, the right, Kelly is going to let the reins roll a little bit and let that leadership team, take some steps. He's encouraged the team to think like owners, right, and to be more like owners, which puts more pressure on, our management team to, not just be taking orders, but to think through the process. Our culture, 2-Second Lean is a book, and we call it our guideline for, what we're trying to do. We want people to, be able to see waste. We want them to make a small 2-second improvement, and we want them to share. We've added a lot of things, Brad, over the years to that process. As I said, culture is hard to put your finger on, but when you come into our plant and people want to shake your hand and they want to show you what they're doing, and they're, excited about work, and they're nominating you as a company to be an employer of the year. Again, it's hard to measure, but you just feel it, right? And so we have, some cultural steering committee meetings where, Kelly and some of the managers would get together and kind of talk through what are we trying to accomplish, what next, are we ready to take another step? So I think those are important things that helped us along the way. As we've been in acquisition mode, we've probably spent more time at the new facilities working to implement culture than we have changing the culture, in Pennsylvania. I think there's this, we've, got people kind of synced up, and we got most of the people, engaged, and that's moving so that we can spend time where we need to get people up to speed. I think that might answer some of your question, but probably not all of it, because, it's like in your organization, how do I define the culture that I want? Who's going to buy into it? Is there a model out there that we're going to use, or is it a set of values, to kind of go back up to the beginning, what is culture? Are there values that we all can agree upon, or was it here? Goals that we want to achieve that, we can get behind. Just some thoughts around that come to mind right now.
Yeah, and if I could just add something, if you boil it down, it comes down to anybody who wants to is able to improve the company.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We don't want to hire robots, right? We want people coming in and bringing their brain and, thinking about how they can make us better. And having trust, and that's on our, leadership team that, you know, if we do make it better, that there's a recognition of it, you know, over the course of time, that, you know, benefit wise, people would experience that. And we don't have a pay to play program. It's not like, hey, I made 6 improvements, so I get, you know, $52. But people that are engaged are recognized. And that's important.
Just to give people a second, if they still have questions, I'm gonna butt in for 1 second because this bumps into what you're saying. I'd like you to put on your calendars September 17th at 6 p.m. Scott Fogel from Rossbacher Insurance is actually going to be our speaker. And we wanted this back to back with Shawn's talk because what Scott does is kind of science. He'd call it science. I call it kind of magic. He uses the Wonderlic process, and our next third Thursday I'm calling Get It Right the First Time, which he uses this process to vet candidates, the right skills, the right attitude for the right job. And Scott can go into detail about how you reduce the expense and the frustration of hiring and training the wrong person into a culture. And just by going through a process of screening and vetting, you can hire the right person. And he's going to share the high end, which is his whole online testing and everything else, as well as low end solutions for finding the right applicant for the right job, and the outcomes financially to groups who do it. So I just wanted to let you know that. And now that I've tap danced a little bit, if anybody has any final questions for Shawn.
That was
This is Betsy.
the Scott Fogel process was how Chuck Gray ended up here.
Right.
That's why I promote him. Because no one else would hire me. And, you know, he just decided that it was worth the gamble. And I think Betsy had a question.
Actually, I just had a comment. I just wanted to say thank you for the invite. Great, Shawn, great presentation. And I ordered the book on Amazon as you were talking. I can't wait to read it. So thank you all.
Yeah, well, it's free as well if you go on, I think it's paulakers.net. He actually has a series of books, 2 Second Lean. He also has one that I personally like as well, is Lean Health. And he has some others that he's written, again, simple reads, you know, 80, 90 pages, big font, lots of pictures, my kind of book, but easy to get behind. So thanks.
Thanks, Shawn. Nice presentation.
And I like how even though our office is a bit more artsy, a bit more community minded, I do think that this will be a valuable tool. I think about waste a great deal, but I love the drumbeat. I love that. Just to keep us on board with one another. And Brad, I'd like to suggest that that's what our board meetings become. Anyway.
All right. Well, I'm reachable at Viking. If anybody needs me, my email's, probably out there in if the Chinese have got my email address, I'm sure people in Corry could get it. But, go ahead and reach out if you got more questions or, are interested in the process, and I can share more information.
Okay, thank you, Shawn.
Thank you.